The 2008-2009 SLA Northern Offensive was an armed conflict in the northern province of Sri Lanka between the military of Sri Lanka and the separatist Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. The battle broke with the Sri Lankan Army Offensive attempting to break through the LTTE defence lines in the north of the island, aiming to conclude the country's 25-year-old civil war by military victory. Background: following the defeat of the LTTE in the eastern province of Sri Lanka and their retreat to the north in July 2007, the Sri Lankan military set its sights on the rebel-held territory in the north. On January 2, 2008, the government of Sri Lanka unilaterally withdrew from the ceasefire agreement, signed on February 22, 2002, with the Tamil Tigers. According to Kehelia Rambukwella, a spokesman for the government on defence issues, the government of Sri Lanka decided to officially withdraw from the ceasefire agreement since it is futile to continue with the ceasefire with no indication that LTTE is willing to enter the peace path. This set the stage for the Army's attack on the forward defence lines in the island's north. The battle probing the LTTE bunker lines in its plans, the SLA adopted new operation tactics and strategic approaches. The Army opened several battle fronts all over the LTTE-controlled areas in Vani. The clear target of the battle was the Elephant Pass. The three main FDLs, Mahamalai, Nagarkoil and Kilali forward defence lines, in Jaffna district, were hit at the same time along with the FDLs in Vavuniya and Mannar districts. Over the next weeks and months, Army units were sent toward LTTE bunker lines in attempts to destroy LTTE bunker positions. By the end of February, although the SLA managed to destroy at least 250 LTTE bunkers, they were only able to advance a few kilometers into rebel territory. However, the SLA were still slowly advancing on the A9 highway, which directly leads toward Elephant Pass. The SLA issued several calls to the LTTE to surrender before the Army's advances. On February 20, SLA forces staged their most intense attack yet on the LTTE bunker lines. In heavy fighting, 92 rebels and 3 soldiers were killed according to the government. Another 20 soldiers were wounded and 5 bunkers were destroyed. More intense fighting also flared up on March 5. Major engagements all along the de facto border separating territory held by the LTTE occurred, and on March 8, SLA troops, backed by helicopter gunships, pushed across the front lines using tanks, mortars and artillery. 84 rebels and 11 soldiers were killed during the close-quarters combat over those 3 days, and 9 rebel bunkers were destroyed and another 4 captured. On March 22, a floating mine or a suicide attack off the northern coast of Sri Lanka claimed the lives of 10 Sri Lankan seamen. None of their bodies were ever recovered. By early April, government soldiers were battling tropical illnesses brought on by heavy rains. About 500 troops affected by dengue fever and the mosquito-borne chikungunya virus were being treated at hospitals. Also, their offensive operations against LTTE frontlines stalled. Mid-April, offensive operations against the LTTE continued and dozens of Tiger bunker positions were overrun. 2 days after the failed offensive, a bomb exploded on a crowded bus in the capital Colombo, killing 24 passengers. On May 16, a suicide bomber attacked a police bus in the Sri Lankan capital, killing 10 people, including 8 policemen. By this point, an estimated 360 rebels and 41 soldiers had been killed in the month of May, according to military sources. On May 17, the military said it captured Palampidi town from Tamil Tiger rebels in Mannar district. A military spokesman said capturing Palampidi was strategically important because it would block the rebels' supply route between the northern Vavuniya and Mannar districts. During the rest of May and throughout June, heavy fighting continued, in which heavy SLA airstrikes resulted in the destruction of an LTTE complex in the jungle. On July 16, Sri Lankan military claimed to have captured a major coastal town, Vidathaltivu, in the Mannar district of northwest Sri Lanka from the Tamil Tigers. According to BBC correspondents, Vidathaltivu was an LTTE naval base and a hub for smuggling supplies from India across Palk Strait. Vidathaltivu is the biggest town situated on Sri Lanka's northwestern coast and was a major base of the Sea Tigers. The Sri Lankan Army 58 Division and Commando Brigade took over the town in an attack that was the first time Sri Lankan military was able to capture the town since the Indian peacekeeping force left Sri Lanka in 1990. The commandos of Sri Lanka's army initially faced resistance from 60 LTTE cadre, but the LTTE soon started a withdrawal towards Ilupakadave as it came under heavy artillery and rocket fire. Later, Sri Lankan military claimed over 30 LTTE cadre were killed for the loss of just one soldier. Sri Lankan troops approaching from the east of Vidathaltivu cut off the Mannar-Punarine road. Finally, the troops marched into the town and captured it after 21 years. Following the capture of the town, the Sri Lankan Air Force attacked withdrawing Tamil Tigers. According to Air Force of Sri Lanka, Mi-24 helicopter gunships sunk 2 LTTE boats 4 kilometers north of Vidathaltivu around 1 p.m. local time, breaking the LTTE defense line on September 2. SLA forces managed to break through LTTE defenses and captured the town of Malavi, which was regarded as a nerve center for the Tamil Tigers. Some 20 SLA soldiers and more than 100 Tigers were killed during the battle for the town. The same day, the LTTE conducted a counter-attack against advancing SLA troops to regain their lost bunker lines. The army claimed to have killed 52 and wounded 65 Tiger fighters. As for the SLA casualties suffered during the counter-attack, the military said that they had 7 soldiers killed, 7 missing and 50 wounded, while the LTTE claimed to have killed 75 soldiers and wounded 100. After the taking of Malavi, the SLA started an advance on the rebels' de facto capital of Kilinochchi. On September 9, LTTE suicide fighters, known as Black Tigers, conducted a raid on a military base in Vavunia in coordination with 2 LTTE bomber planes and a Tiger artillery barrage, which totaled 70 shells. The raid left 25 people dead, 12 soldiers, 11 Tigers, 1 policeman and 1 civilian. Since early September, heavy fighting was raging for the town of Nashchikuda, both on land and sea. At least 29 soldiers were killed during that battle, along with 100 to 200 Tigers in the month of September, according to the military. Dozens more died in October, and the seaport, which was a vital base for the LTTE's Sea Tigers, finally fell on October 30. By October 12, the SLA had come within 2 kilometers from the outskirts of Kilinochchi. The LTTE were preparing to defend the city with a string of concrete bunkers and trenches in a heavily mined jungle surrounding the town. The west coast falls and Kilinochchi is surrounded between October 18 and October 20. Heavy fighting raged on the outskirts of Kilinochchi, with SLA troops attempting to break through LTTE bunker lines. During these 2 days, 36 SLA soldiers were killed and 48 were wounded, in contrast to 12 Tamil Tiger fighters killed. This resulted in the deaths of some soldiers and the sickening of others. Also, the military was not able to punch through the last of the LTTE bunker lines before the city, because of heavy rains due to the monsoon season, and also because most of the troops were needed to secure rebel territory that was rapidly taken in the previous 2 months after the LTTE's quick retreat to the north. With SLA forces stretched, that territory was coming under hit-and-run attacks by the rebels. Even the Sri Lankan Air Force was not being able to dislodge the rebels from their positions on the roads into Kilinochchi. The city had, by this point, been evacuated of all civilians in the LTTE were preparing bunker positions within the town. Earlier in the month the SLA stated they would take the rebel capital within days. However, more than 2 weeks later operation maps at press briefings showed they were still 10 to 15 kilometers from the town, in contrast with their previous statements of being only 2 kilometers from Kilinochchi. By mid-November SLA forces managed to clear the entire west coast of LTTE Carders. By November 17, the SLA captured 3 more strategic towns: Mankulam, Panikankulam and Poonreen. Mankulam and Poonreen had been in LTTE hands for the previous 9 years. 54 soldiers were killed and another 350 wounded in the battle for Poonreen, which fell after SLA forces advanced on the Poonreen-Peranthan road. At the same time an offensive was conducted on the Mahamalai front. There, the SLA were attempting to break through the LTTE forward defense lines. Half a dozen attacks were repulsed by the LTTE, leaving hundreds of casualties among government forces. In 3 days between November 16 and November 19, 200 SLA soldiers were reported to have been killed and another 700 wounded in battles across the north of the country. Some opposition lawmakers put the number at 250 killed. A Sri Lankan military source said the SLA command in Jaffna had lost contact with 2 battalions. However, despite this, the SLA managed to break through the first line of the LTTE's defense on the Mahamalai front on November 20, which gave the SLA another 800 yards. This left the LTTE with 2 more lines of defense at Mahamalai. Battle for Kilinochchi in December. 3 unsuccessful SLA offensives were conducted in an attempt to take the capital of the Tigers, Kilinochchi. In early January, however, the town was taken by the SLA. On December 10, an offensive was blunted with the deaths of 89 SLA soldiers according to a LTTE-affiliated website, versus SLA reported deaths of 20 soldiers and 27 Tigers. On December 16, a multi-front offensive was launched by the SLA against Kilinochchi. That offensive too was defeated by the Tigers. According to the Tigers, the SLA lost 2 battalions of troops, 170 soldiers dead and 420 wounded. The SLA denied this and claimed to have had only 25 soldiers killed, 18 missing and 160 wounded, while they killed 120 Tigers. In any case, it was a critical victory for the Tigers at a time when they were being squeezed into the last pockets of territory they were holding. Such stiff resistance was not expected from the LTTE so late in the battle. This was mainly because the LTTE now deployed their best Special Forces members against the SLA's might, which were held back earlier. On December 20, an LTTE counter-offensive was mounted by the Tigers as SLA forces were preparing an attempt to attack and capture the village of Iran Armadu, just south of the city. In the fighting that ensued, the Tigers claimed to have killed 60 and wounded 150 SLA soldiers and pushed them back by 2 kilometers. The military again reported lower numbers of dead, 28 killed and missing. On January 2, 2009, the Sri Lankan Army troops entered the town of Kilinochchi from 2 sides. The intensity of fighting after the army entered the town remained unknown, as both Army and LTTE had banned independent reporters from the areas. The Sri Lankan Army met with only minimal resistance once it entered the town, as the Tigers had withdrawn and taken hiding positions in nearby jungles. Later, the military officially announced it had taken control of the town and were performing mopping operations. Fall of Elephant Pass and Mulativu on January 9, 2009. The LTTE's defense line in the Jaffna Peninsula collapsed and SLA units from the north captured the strategic Elephant Pass base, which had been under LTTE control for almost 9 years. LTTE fighters provided only minimal resistance to the advancing troops and instead retreated toward Malativu in the northeast of the island, the last major town held by the LTTE, to where LTTE forces from Kilinochchi had already retreated. On January 25, SLA troops crossed a lagoon and entered Malativu before encountering heavy resistance from the LTTE. After several hours of fighting, the military captured the last Tamil Tiger stronghold. However, even with the fall of Malativu, heavy fighting continued in the northeastern jungles, with artillery bombardments killing another 160 civilians between January 25 and January 27. Human Rights Watch alleges that Sri Lankan Army artillery strikes against a hospital in Malativu killed 67 people, and wounded another 87. An article for The Guardian contends that the artillery strikes targeting in a government-designated safe zone adjacent to the hospital killed 378 people and injured 1,212. LTTE's last stand by early February 2009, LTTE-controlled territory was reduced to 200 square kilometers. In a battle between February 2 and February 6, SLA forces captured the last Sea Tigers base at Chilai, north of Malativu. 12 Sea Tigers were killed, including 4 top Sea Tiger commanders. By early March 2009, SLA forces surrounded the last LTTE-held town, Padakudarapu. There they encountered heavy resistance from the final remnants of the LTTE, which stalled the SLA offensive yet again. Between March 5 and 8, heavy fighting raged as LTTE fighters conducted wave attacks against SLA lines in an attempt to break through. The SLA responded with heavy artillery shelling that left hundreds of civilian casualties. During those 3 days, 250 rebels were killed according to SLA sources. Pro-LTTE website Tamilnet reported that at least 100 soldiers and 300 civilians were also killed. On March 10, Black Tiger commandos reportedly attacked SLA artillery positions in Thiraville, 18 kilometers from Padakudarapu Junction. They, in a joint operation with LTTE's Kal Kidu artillery formation, destroyed 6 SLA artillery weapons platforms. The LTTE reported that they killed more than 50 soldiers while losing only 3 commandos. Between March 14 and March 17, heavy battles raged and it seemed that the LTTE finally managed to halt the advance of the SLA after a year of fighting, just when less than 28 square kilometers were left under the Tiger control. The fighting left 604 SLA soldiers dead, according to the LTTE. Black Tiger commandos were also involved in the fighting. Despite this momentary victory, the Tigers were still sustaining heavy casualties. By March 21, the LTTE's strength was down to only 1,500 fighters. After the military advances were halted, the SLA stopped using massive ground attacks on LTTE front lines and concentrated on heavy artillery attacks on the positions. These attacks were leaving hundreds of civilian casualties and creating a humanitarian disaster. Between March 18 and March 26, SLA artillery and airstrikes left more than 420 civilians killed and more than 660 wounded inside the government-declared safe zone. On March 24, the LTTE attempted to break out through the SLA defenses north of Iranapalai. However, they were stopped by intense fire from SLA infantry and armored units. The same day the military continued its advance. A week after the start of the heavy artillery and air attacks, members of 53 Division and Task Force 8 seized control over a section of the LTTE-built earth-bund ditch across the A35 main road. west of the Nantha Kardal Lagoon. Between April 1 and April 5, SLA forces killed 525 rebels and captured Pudukudi-Rirapu. Now, the only uncleared territory for the SLA was the no-fire zone, where the remaining 500 LTTE fighters were mingled with the civilian refugees. The LTTE managed to hold out against the military for another month, but by mid-May the end was near. By the first 2 weeks of May, tens of thousands of refugees poured out of rebel-held territory after the military made holes in the LTTE's defenses. In these final stages of the war, between May 7 and May 14, around 1,000 civilians were killed in the fighting. By May 15, all civilians had been evacuated from the no-fire zone and the military stated the war will be over in 48 hours. In those last 48 hours of fighting, the LTTE conducted massive suicide bomb attacks on advancing troops and were in general not surrendering but dying in battle. Early on May 16, the SLA forces coming in from the north linked up with the forces coming in from the south on the coastline, effectively cutting off the Tigers from the sea. Now they were boxed in and surrounded by the SLA on a territory only 1.92 square kilometers in size, with their back against the Nantha Kardal Lagoon. Defeat of the LTTE. President Mahinda Rajapaksa declared military victory over the Tigers on May 16, 2009, after 26 years of conflict. On the same day, for the first time in their long struggle against the Sri Lankan government, the rebels were offering to lay down their weapons in return for a guarantee of safety. Sri Lanka's Disaster Relief and Human Rights Minister Mahinda Samarasinghe stated, "The military phase is over. The LTTE has been militarily defeated. Now the biggest hostage rescue operation in the world has come to a conclusion. The figure I have here is since the 20th of April, 179,000 hostages have been rescued." On May 17, rebel official Selvarasa Pathmanathan conceded defeat, saying in an email statement, "This battle has reached its bitter end." Earlier in the day, a group of about 70 Tamil Tigers tried to cross the lagoon to the other side in 6 boats and escape, but they were all killed by the SLA. Also, SLA Special Forces rescued 7 POWs. The 4 sailors had been in captivity since November 2006. Late in the evening, SLA Special Forces conducted a raid in which they killed Charles Anthony, the eldest son of the LTTE leader Velupillai Prabhakaran, Balasingham Nadezhan, the leader of the political wing of the LTTE, Sivaratnam Pulidevan, head of the LTTE's Peace Secretariat, and Ramesh, a top military leader. On May 18, the Sri Lanka Army forces confirmed that Prabhakaran was killed in the morning of that day. According to the UK Telegraph, Prabhakaran was killed in a rocket-propelled grenade attack as he tried to escape the war zone with his closest aides. Susai, the leader of his Sea Tigers Navy, and Potu Aman, his intelligence chief, were also killed in the attack. The LTTE confirmed Prabhakaran's death on May 24. Foreign Tamils ceasefire call. Tamil people in India, as well as the worldwide Tamil diaspora, had repeatedly called for a ceasefire. Rallies had taken place in many major Western cities such as Toronto, London, Washington, Montreal, Paris, Berlin, etc.